Welcome back to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sarah Banta, the owner of Accelerated Health Products. And today we have Justin Stillman talking all things disease prevention. Justin, we were talking about iron overload, and you mentioned in the end copper. And this is something a lot of people aren't talking about. But can you tell us a little bit more about the importance of copper in the body?
Yeah, so I have a basic understanding of it through the guests of our show and the research we've done, but I've ever heard was that copper is toxic. I got my HTMA back, and my copper is I'm copper overloaded. But when you start to understand what copper does inside the body, it's amazing. I share a lot of this on our Instagram stories and highlights. But copper regulates iron. It's the only other metal that will do that. And so what happens is that there's a guest on our show a while back talking about the amount of iron we have in our body. And if you were to sort of flatten it out and spread it out over a specified area, it would equal about an entire football field of iron inside of our body that's stuck in our tissues and in our blood. And so the amount of copper that we have to regulate that equals about 3 pennies worth. And so that's not a lot of copper that we have to regulate all of that iron. It's the only metal that helps to turn down the oxidative impact of iron overload in the body. And it does everything. We did an entire show about how it regulates and runs your entire immune system. It's incredible in terms of what it can do. It donates electrons. It's an electron donor. It has impacts on just about every single disease that you have. And when you understand that, if you were like 5 years ago, if you were to tell me that, I would just say, oh, wow, interesting that it does that. But when you understand how it regulates iron and how iron is implicated in every disease known to man, then it starts to make sense. Okay, copper is the only metal to mitigate or turn off the oxidative stress caused by iron overload. So it makes sense that it would do all the things that I'm reading about that it does. And so it's just incredible. Like one thing it does, for example, is it activates a specific enzyme called ferroportin. And ferroportin is a iron dependent enzyme that allows iron to get out of the cell. So if you don't have enough ferroportin, then iron gets in the cell and gets stuck in the cell, causing oxidative damage, reactive oxygen species. Then that cell doesn't live very long. It doesn't live the entire life it's supposed to, and it dies prematurely, and we die prematurely as a result. So ferroportin is required to let iron get out of the cell. I think there's like 5 or 6 ways iron can get into the cell, but only one way out. And that one way is through ferroportin, and copper activates the opening of ferroportin. So if you don't have enough copper, iron can't get out of the cell so that it can go and be in circulation. And so that's one thing, but it does so many other things. It donates electrons. It helps reduce oxidation. It helps the creation of energy. Do you guys have a copper? You should have an accelerated copper supplement. That would be amazing.
We used to, and we've thought about it as soon as we, it's very expensive to make. So budget wise, but it is on our list. Believe me, we've talked about it. We've got the silver, we've got the gold. We used to have platinum. That's also expensive to make, but we will, we will do the copper. It's in the future.
That would be amazing. Yeah, that would be great. That'd be great. Yeah. So there's on our Instagram stories, I have a highlight of copper and all the research studies, but it just goes on and on and on. And so it's been implicated in Alzheimer's disease, at least a lack thereof has been implicated in Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, digestive issues, fatty liver disease. Just about every disease you can imagine shows up as a low copper. And so it's really important. So for copper to be activated, though, it requires retinoic acid, which is vitamin A. And that only comes from animal food. And so I thought for the 7 years I was vegan, where was I getting my retinol, right? So retinoic acid, I think there's multiple forms, but there's one called 13-cis retinoic acid. And it's my understanding that that is what allows copper to be loaded into ceruloplasmin. And so free flowing copper in the body can cause issues because it's not bound to the protein it's supposed to be bound to, which is called ceruloplasmin. And that protein can activate in 24 different enzymes. It's got like 1,066 amino acids attached to it. It's got 8 copper atoms inside of it. It's really what I've heard people talk about. It's like the Rife machine of the body. It's pretty fascinating, but it you need retinoic acid to load copper into that protein so that it can then go do its job. And so that's why vitamin A, retinol, and copper are so important. Because if you have the copper without the vitamin A, then that copper is not going to be bioavailable. And then you're going to get an HCMA and you say you're copper toxic. But if you have the retinoic acid coming in from retinol animal foods, then you can get that copper loaded, and then you can that will help activate the reticuloendothelial system, which will allow the reduction of iron and oxidative stress. Because when oxidative stress is rising because iron's rising, then the number one mineral to deal with that oxidative stress is magnesium. And we need magnesium because 42% of our metabolic processes require it. There's like 9,000 enzymes. And I think it's like 3,700 of them require magnesium to operate. So now you have oxidative stress rising, and now you don't have any magnesium because you're using it all from the inflammation from our diet and lifestyle. So it's really a complex kind of a system, but it's pretty basic too.